9 hours under anesthesia, 73 missed calls, and one voicemail from my father changed everything. While I was unconscious on an operating table, my parents had sold my $425,000 condo to help pay for my sister's wedding. They told me not to worry because everything had already been taken care of. What they didn't know was that I had already canceled the legal authority my father once had. And when I discovered the exact time they claimed I had signed the deed, I realized they had made one mistake that could destroy their entire plan. My name is Maren Sutton, and I'm a surgical nurse. I bought that condo after returning from 2 Army deployments and spent 6 years steadily paying it off. Every payment represented long shifts, personal sacrifices, and years of putting my own needs aside. It wasn't just a property to me. It was the first thing in my life that truly belonged to me. A few months before my surgery, my father asked if I would take out a loan against the condo to help my younger sister Brooke pay for her wedding. I refused. His reaction immediately made me suspicious, so I remembered an old power of attorney I had signed years earlier before one of my deployments. 2 days before my surgery, I formally revoked it in writing and gave my father a copy. I believed I had protected myself. Then I woke up. My throat was painfully dry, my back was secured in a brace, and my phone showed 73 missed calls. My father's voicemail sounded strangely calm. He told me they had sold my condo for $425,000 while I was unconscious, and that the money was already being used for Brooke's wedding expenses. I didn't call my parents. Instead, I called an attorney. Louis Brennan immediately told me to gather every document I could find and avoid saying anything unnecessary to my family. Within a few days, he located the recorded deed. The buyer was Roy Maddox, my father's longtime business partner. The property was worth roughly $425,000, yet Roy had supposedly purchased it for only $300,000 in cash. Then Brennan discovered something even more disturbing. The signature on the deed wasn't mine. According to the notary records, I had personally appeared and signed the deed at 1:47 in the afternoon on the exact day of my surgery. So I requested my complete medical records. At 1:47, I was unconscious. My anesthesia chart showed that I was lying face down on an operating table connected to medical equipment while surgeons worked on my spine. My vital signs had been recorded at that exact minute. There was absolutely no way I could have been standing in front of a notary, but Brennan still needed evidence proving my father had no legal authority to sell the condo. The original revocation was locked inside the home I no longer had access to. Then I remembered my Army habit of scanning every important document. I searched through my digital files, and there it was, the signed revocation, dated and emailed 2 days before my surgery. My father had relied on a power of attorney that was already legally invalid. When I confronted Roy, he remained completely confident. He insisted my father had authority, and warned me that proving anything while recovering in a hospital bed would be difficult. I looked at him and said, "You'd be surprised what I can prove while lying flat on my back." Brennan immediately filed a lawsuit seeking to establish that the condo still belonged to me. The property was frozen, preventing Roy from selling it, refinancing it, or transferring ownership. A financial crimes detective also began examining the transaction. Then my father showed up at my apartment. For the first time, he admitted that his business had collapsed. He owed Roy $140,000 and was terrified of appearing like a failure in front of Brooke's wealthy future in-laws. He had used my condo to solve his own financial crisis. Then he asked me to drop the lawsuit until after the wedding. Even then, he was still asking me to sacrifice my future so he could protect his reputation. I refused, but I didn't stop there. I decided the truth needed to come out, and I knew exactly where my father would have the hardest time controlling the story: the rehearsal dinner. Both families were gathered at an expensive country club when my mother pulled me aside and begged me not to create a scene. She repeated the same words they had used from the beginning. "It's just a condo." I looked directly at her and said, "No, it's 6 years of my life." Then dinner began. My father stood up and gave a speech about family sacrifice. He praised me as the generous daughter who was always willing to give everything to help the people she loved. Then he raised his glass toward me. That was when I stood. I told everyone that while I had been unconscious for 9 hours during spinal surgery, my home had been sold without my knowledge or permission. I placed the deed on the table. Then I showed them the notary record claiming I had signed it at 1:47. Finally, I placed my anesthesia record beside it. At 1:47, I had been unconscious on an operating table. The entire room went completely silent. Then I placed the revocation on the table. 2 days before the sale, I had legally canceled my father's authority to act on my behalf. I looked at my father and asked, if I was unconscious in surgery and you no longer had legal authority to act for me, then whose hand signed my name? My father immediately exploded. He accused me of embarrassing the family and deliberately humiliating everyone. My mother started crying, but their excuses couldn't compete with the documents in front of them. Then Brooke stood up. She admitted she had never known what was really happening. Our parents had told her that I wanted to help pay for her wedding. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and apologized. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was the first completely honest thing anyone in my family had said that night. I left without yelling, threatening anyone, or begging them to understand. I didn't need to. The evidence had already spoken for me. Months later, the court declared the deed invalid and restored the condo to my name. The title company faced consequences, while Roy had to answer serious questions about the suspicious purchase. My father also had to explain why he had used a power of attorney that had already been revoked. The wedding was postponed. Brooke and I slowly began rebuilding our relationship, one conversation at a time. My parents and I became distant, and I stopped being the person everyone could turn to whenever they needed money, favors, or another sacrifice. Eventually, I returned to work. Every time I watched an anesthesiologist start the clock before a surgery, I remembered everything that had happened. The medical records created to protect patients had become the evidence that ultimately saved my home. My family had believed they had chosen the perfect moment to take everything from me. I was unconscious. I couldn't walk, and I could barely lift my arm. They thought that meant I was powerless. They were wrong. They forgot that being helpless for 9 hours isn't the same as being powerless forever. They stole my signature but forgot the timestamp. They took my home but forgot the documents. And they forgot something even more important. For years, they had called me the strong one. They simply never imagined that one day, the strong one would stop carrying them. They expected me to wake up, forgive them, and quietly pay for their mistakes. Instead, I woke up with 73 missed calls, uncovered the truth, and took my life back one document at a time. Sometimes, the people who believe you are too weak to fight are simply giving you the perfect opportunity to show them exactly how wrong they were.